Turbo 64, the podcast in which two friends talk about video games. I am once again Jason Vandervoort, and I am joined by...
Jeff Ross over here.
Welcome, Jeff. Welcome back to the studio.
Thank you. Happy to be here once again.
Yeah, I use the term studio very loosely.
There's two microphones in here.
There's two microphones, there's a computer, there's speakers,
little screen things.
Yeah,
mics.
exactly. Yeah, no, it's a very DIY setup, but you know what? It works.
It really works. Yeah.
Good.
It is a bedroom, though.
It is a bedroom. Yeah, there's no getting around that. It's a bedroom, it's an office, it's an entertainment center. You know, just multifunctioned.
Heck yeah.
So, what you been playing lately, Jeff?
Well,
what's in the old PS4 these days?
You might recall that in the last app I was halfway through Uncharted 1 and talking about difficulty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were playing it on... Was it the hardest difficulty or just shy of it?
Well, the first three games have a difficulty called Brutal that you have to unlock.
Oh, you don't get it right out of the gate?
Right.
Okay.
And so I was trying to play it on Crushing, and then I switched to Hard. And I ended up rocking Hard through 2, 3, and now into 4. But in 4, that is the second highest. Okay. Crushing is the one that you unlock.
So they had 5 difficulties, but then they just moved it down to 4.
They had 6, I believe. Let's see.
Oh my god.
They had very easy, normal, hard, crushing, brutal.
Okay.
And then now they have 5.
Okay.
Something like that. But more importantly, I've been playing a bunch of Uncharted, and I've been playing a little bit of Battlefront 2's story mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are still very much in the thick
in
of
my
your
Star Wars kick.
You know, I keep expecting for that bubble to break, but
Yeah.
you just... I mean, it's great because for someone who is in the thick of a Star Wars kick, there is still always something.
There's always more. Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, you could have a Star Wars kick for the next 15 years.
I really could.
And yeah, you'd still probably not be able to get through all of it.
You know what's bad when I start thinking about, I need a TIE fighter of some kind. Do I get, a Lego or a tattoo? I need a TIE fighter.
I'm a big advocate of you getting a Star Wars tattoo.
I think that's a little excessive. I have 0 tattoos for what it's worth.
But it's a great way to start.
Yeah. You know, I certainly didn't bring this up intentionally, but it has been on my mind that there was a great Rage Against the Machine Star Wars tattoo.
Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah.
your two. That's two of your greatest
I know.
interests just melded together.
It's Evil Empire's album cover with Darth Vader's face on the little boy, you know.
That's fantastic.
It's pretty good.
Now, this is going to be, this is wildly off topic.
Yeah.
But you're going to be seeing Rage Against the Machine.
I know. I'm so stoked.
Oh, I wish I could have joined you, but yeah, I was pretty much broke, but
that's life.
Yeah, that's what all the people say. But yeah, I'm very stoked for you to see Rage Against the Machine. We are both Rage Against the Machine fans, and it can be hard to be a Rage Against the Machine fan because
they've been defunct for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. They basically only surface in times of great strife.
Yeah.
And apparently now is a time of great strife.
Absolutely.
Tom Morello's able to get the old band back together and just yell about the government.
Yeah. But back to my Star Wars kick.
Exactly. Yes.
It has, one of our teachers back in school once said that love, starts off like a blazing inferno and eventually cools into a warm fire you can warm your hands by. And that's what's happened with my Star Wars kick.
It was a blazing inferno, and now you're just
Now I can just comfortably consume Star Wars at my leisure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You just put your feet up against it and just just let it radiate through your toes upward.
Absolutely.
How are you digging Battlefront's story mode? Because when Battlefront 2 was gearing up to be released, I was really excited about it, because I mean Battlefront or Battlefield, the campaigns of that are supposed to be fairly good. And the idea of a single player Star Wars shooter campaign was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And so I was, pretty interested at the onset of getting it and playing it. But basically, just before Battlefront 2 came out, was revealed just how bad the microtransaction thing had basically just permeated through all of the game. And at that point, I was just thinking to myself, not exactly something that I want to support.
Right.
But I'm under the impression that, EA basically backed off from that quite a bit and have, made the game quite a bit more playable, in the time that it's been out.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure how the microtransactions affected the single player mode. There is a card thing that they have where you have pick 3 different power-ups for your character whenever you start a new life.
Yep.
And that seems to be the only, that might be just like a reference to the multiplayer having that same mechanic. And that's the thing, the problem with the microtransactions was that you would be able to get an overpowered gun in a loot box, and then you'd put that as one of your 3 power-ups for that round. And then but honestly, I was in the same boat as you in that single player shooter campaign for Star Wars sounded pretty sick. And I was also enthused with the idea of playing as an Imperial person,
Right.
And it turns out that it's not great, That's the first, I should have guessed. I think perhaps the microtransactions overshadowed some of the other smaller problems with the game,
right, because it was such a glaring problem, and it's kind of the enemy, Basically, everyone can agree that microtransactions are horrible, and pretty much everyone hates them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
That being said, I feel like, if you want to put in cosmetics in your game, or if you I don't think loot boxes are the devil. I think that, intentionally addictive things, to kind of abuse parent or children's access to their parents' money, that can be the devil. But if I, it's funny because if I hate on Battlefront for its misattribution of, well, no, that's the wrong word. What I mean to say is that if Battlefront is sinning in that it uses these loot boxes, then how can I justify playing Overwatch so much, But no, I found there's a couple small problems with the game, and one of the first thing that comes to mind is that the goddamn enemies that you kill, there is a 70% chance that something funky will happen with their corpse. And that's funny at first, especially.
Yeah. Like a weird ragdoll animation or something?
The most common thing that happens is that they will continuously do a death animation forever. So they get shot, they fall down, they teleport up, and they fall down.
Really?
And that happens a lot. And then the second most common thing that happens is that they will begin to float as if in anti-gravity, you know, on like you're on the moon of Endor or something, and these guys are just like floating away after you shoot them, and you're like, what the hell is happening? But so
Star Wars teaches us that no one really ever dies. even people who fall down the shaft of a Death Star that is just about to blow up, still they don't die.
Yeah, they're becoming one with the Force whenever I blast them into bits, you know.
That's beautiful.
But, I find myself a little surprised to be complaining that they don't have a difficulty slider once the campaign is started. So you can choose before easy, medium, hard.
Yeah, like right when you get started.
Yeah.
But you can't change it?
Once you have begun your campaign, which has become a standard thing in games now. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm surprised to be mad about it is that I never used it once it started, except recently. Like I did with Uncharted. I changed it from crushing to hard.
Yeah.
And I found myself, I'm like, all right, let's start on normal. The first few, like, mission or 5 was very, very easy. And then I'm like, and then there's just a sudden difficulty spike, and it was very hard.
Yeah.
And so there was none of the sweet spot of difficulty. But, yeah, like, it's got a formulaic campaign where you shoot and then you fly and then you shoot and fly. And,
sure.
You know, it's just a matter of shooting down Imperial scum eventually. Because that's, you know, spoiler alert, you become a rebel about a third of the way through the campaign.
Well, great. Now I'm not going to play it.
Yeah, right. If I can't shoot, you know, people fighting for a better life, then there's no point.
Scum.
Exactly. Rebel scum. That's enough about
That's the tattoo
Battlefront.
you should get.
Rebel scum. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, just get it on your bicep. For whatever reason, I don't know why that's the one that I jumped to.
Yeah. I can flex my rebellious nature.
Exactly. Yeah, get it right before you go see Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah. So, I gotta say, Battlefront 2, not great.
Mm-hmm. Has that sullied your Star Wars kick?
You know, I've chosen to not let it.
Good.
Because I was just about to say that it ends on a cliffhanger, but they added 3 more missions to conclude the story.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm like, I don't want to play the last 3. I don't care anymore.
I just don't care, right?
Yeah. They, just kicked the microphone out of rage.
Yeah,
out of
I don't care.
I'm just so upset.
I don't even want to play the last 3 missions.
So, yeah. Uncharted, on the other hand, has been getting, like, steadily better. Like, I think that the leap to Uncharted 2... fantastic. Mm-hmm. Perhaps a micro dip in the second half of Uncharted 3.
The micro dip.
Yeah. And then just a huge soaring rocket leap upward in Uncharted 4.
Yeah. Uncharted 4 is phenomenal.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
I just found myself like actually enjoying myself when I played that game.
Wow.
Like, wow, yeah.
What a unique feeling.
Yeah. Is this fun? That's what it felt like to play Battlefield era. Wow. Again,
yeah.
Uncharted 4.
Yep.
For a little bit. I'm probably almost halfway through, or about something like that.
Nice.
What have you been playing, Jason?
Well, in the last episode, I was basically just kind of counting down the days until the remaster of Yakuza 5 came out.
And it came out.
Yeah, I am playing Yakuza 5. And so, like, my journey with Kiryu is almost at an end. you know?
Oh,
Because,
yeah.
I mean, there's Yakuza 5, and then there's Yakuza 6, which I already have but haven't started yet. You know, I wanted to be able to play it all chronologically.
Right. Yeah.
And, yeah, Yakuza 7, it's a different protagonist, you know?
Is it starting to get bittersweet holding on to Kiryu's lifestyle?
A little bit. A little bit, yeah. Like, so, in Yakuza 0, you're basically at the very beginning of his life as he joins up with the Yakuza. By the end of 1, he's pretty much out, you know? And in 2, he's out, but he's still pretty ingrained in it. By 3, you know, he's really distanced himself. He doesn't even, like, he's not living in Kamurocho anymore, which is where the series really kind of takes place. He's living out in Okinawa. He's running an orphanage. And so he's really moved on to this next stage of his life. But, you know, they just keep pulling him back in. And it's funny because, you know, it's not that jarring, you know, the conflicts in, say, like Yakuza's 1 and 2, and even 3 to an extent. But with 4 and 5, I just can't help but think to myself, like, man, this guy can't catch a break. It's just, okay, so I'm going to live here for a while. I've completely cut ties with my past. I'm going to run an orphanage. Oh, crap, there's a Yakuza power struggle here, too.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, yeah, he can't get away from it. Sometimes that's done very well and in unique ways. Other times it's just, okay, you wanted to make another Yakuza game and you really stretched things out, you know, just to make it. And so by the end of Yakuza 4, because every other game, pretty much, you were just playing as Kiryu. In 0, you switched between Kiryu and Majima. But in 4, there's 4 protagonists.
Right.
And I only like 2 of them.
Yeah. Is one of them Majima also?
Majima isn't a protagonist in 4. The other protagonist that I like, his name is Akiyama, and he's a moneylender. And he's just, I don't know, he's a lovable scoundrel, basically. Akiyama returns in 5, but there's 5 protagonists in 5, and so I had this moment of thinking, like, oh god. And I mean, it's not to say that I don't think Yakuza 4 is bad, but it's just, you know, by adding a lot of these extra things, I feel like it started to really kind of deviate, you know? It really started to muddy the waters. It's cool to kind of get a different approaches to what the world is like, but then after a while, the fact that all of these people are interconnected and the struggle seems to kind of unfold around them, it kind of makes it a little bit, I don't know, your suspension of disbelief kind of gets really shook, I suppose. So far, I would probably say I'm like maybe a third or halfway through the main story of 5. And it starts off so wonderfully. Just at the very beginning of it, I'm like, ooh, this is...
That's good stuff.
Yeah, this is the good stuff. This is what it's all about for me. It kind of faltered for a little while. And approaching the halfway point, I was just thinking to myself, like, oh boy, it's turning into just a tiny bit of a slog. Just hold on, Jason. It's going to get better. And it's gotten better. It's... some of the stuff is getting to be very interesting again, and it's just, I don't know, it's, now that I'm just so invested in the series now, and like going to these places and interacting with these characters is just, it's very fun, and it's a experience that I haven't encountered much in games, you know, because most games, and I think I kind of talked on this before, but, you know, they don't really go for these really big stories that take place over a longer period of time, you know. It's just, it's a risky thing to do in games, just because you never really know if you're going to make the money to
to get the final bit of the story
exactly
out.
yeah
And people long for that conclusion too. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And yeah, you don't want to leave them high and dry.
Right.
But no, it's been a very enjoyable experience so far, and I'm just really excited to play 6. And yeah, I'm in it. I'm in it for the long haul. Basically,
yeah.
anything Yakuza related comes out, you can bet that I'll be like in line very, very early on. I don't know if I'll be first in line because it always takes me a while to get to places, to want to pick things up.
Yeah.
I don't want to get up too early. But
No.
I'll be there,
You'll be there.
Yeah. But, when you were talking about the difficulty thing and not being able to shift it, Yakuza does something really cool with that. I mean, you pick your difficulty at the beginning of the game.
Okay.
And, but if you have encountered a boss fight that is, really giving you trouble.
Okay.
If you have lost against this boss like 2 or 3 times, when you select try again, it'll give you an option. Would you like to try this at a reduced difficulty? And so that's really nice.
Yeah.
You still get to play the game at that difficulty that you set.
Right.
But, pretty much every game, you can have these instances where there's almost an uncharacteristic difficulty spike. In my time with 5, things were going really well, and then I ended up fighting a boss that seemed uncharacteristically strong for the point of the game that I was in.
Okay.
And it took me a couple of attempts to beat them just because they had some kind of cheap moves. But once I was able to kind of really figure my way out about it, it didn't become as big a deal. But I'm glad that those difficulty lowering things are there because, I mean, if you're playing a game and you get one of those really big difficulty spikes, few things I think in games can really kill your enthusiasm to keep playing the game than something like that.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's like a common refrain is that people, a lot of tryhards out there seem to get a little salty when you offer them to lower the difficulty. That's like a joke I see online a lot. Basically is, how dare you ask me if I want to go down in difficulty? And it happened to me in like Fallen Order. It's like, you can lower the difficulty at any time. And I'm like, I know.
How dare you?
Yeah, exactly. So it's nice, you gotta have that feature now, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just a good quality of life thing to have,
Yeah.
But, this whole thing kind of brings us to the main topic of today's episode, which is cinematic games. We've basically without really any pre-planning, we both found ourselves really
playing some cinematic
games, and just really caught up in them. I mean, you're caught up in Uncharted, and it's kind of big cinematic overarching thing.
Yeah.
And me with Yakuza, so we're very, very up in that cinematic style right now. And
absolutely.
So, it's an interesting thing. Games have really been becoming steadily more cinematic as the years kind of go on. It seems that in a lot of ways, cinematic games, or like games that have a cinematic kind of style to them, almost kind of have become a bit of an industry standard.
Yeah.
With a lot of things. Like, I mean, God of War, the most recent God of War.
Right.
It did, which, I mean, I think was really cool. It tells the story in what is made to look like a single camera shot.
Right.
And I mean, I'm a sucker for movies who do
the one shot.
Yeah, or the really long shots.
Long takes.
Yeah,
sure.
we just a few friends, we went to go see 1917 fairly recently, and that does the whole one shot thing a few times. And it's just, when it's done, it's just, I don't know, it can be just such a captivating thing to watch. And I think for God of War, it worked out just
pretty spectacular.
Yeah, pretty spectacular. Yeah, and I mean, it hit its loading screens very well. It just it's just an example of that of a certain cinematic style being just used brilliantly for a game. And I mean, like Uncharted, God of War, they're like nowhere near the only people who are doing this. I mean, Rockstar has kind of been just really big advocates of, a much more cinematic style of storytelling. Basically, once Grand Theft Auto shifted from being top down to 3D, it really started doing that. Like it had, cutscenes started getting longer. They had major Hollywood actors in voice roles, and I mean we're seeing major actors appearing in games quite a bit now.
Yeah.
I mean, in Hideo Kojima's most recent game, Death Stranding, I mean, you've got Norman Reedus in it. He's right on the cover. And you also got Mads Mikkelsen is in it. Yeah, it's just
Margaret Qualley's in there.
Yeah, we're just seeing, and I mean, even the director Guillermo del Toro is in it, and so is Nicholas Winding Refn, who's the guy who did Drive.
Okay.
So it's like, I mean, Hideo Kojima he's a big movie guy.
Yeah.
He loves his movies, and that he really wears that inspiration on his sleeve.
It seems like he dreamt of being a director and is like been cursed into being a video game director.
Yeah, and he's just hell bent on saying, "I'll make it's a game, sure, but it's a movie." I mean, I think I remember in Metal Gear Solid 4,
that broke the record for like most cutscene time.
Yeah, and because it's that cutscene or that sequence of cutscenes in kind of the turning point of the story is like an hour.
No, there's like a 2-hour series of sub cutscenes.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, and I mean,
and frankly, that's been what's stopped me from going back to that game.
From going back to 4.
Yeah.
Right.
Does the cinematic thing wear on you a little bit? I don't know.
I think it can. It really does depend on how it's utilized. Yeah. I mean, even in Yakuza, there's plenty of times, where, you'll be getting cutscenes and just kind of long droughts, where you really have no interaction or say, in what's going on in the world around you. And like, that's kind of, for me, that's the most interesting thing is like, video games, they're basically the only medium for storytelling in which you have a pretty direct way of how the story unfolds. And so it's really interesting that like some of the biggest games that we've been seeing, really take so much choice away from the people who are playing them.
And in a way, the choice phenomenon is newer than the cinematic phenomenon.
It is, yes.
It's hard to say that choice is being removed when it's something that it's fresh, to add choice to the games.
Right.
But it certainly seems like that's a piece of like that's something that you can't seem to have. It's mutually exclusive almost, the choice versus the cinematic, and yet you get games like the occasional game like LA Noire,
Right.
I think,
or the people who make Detroit Become Human, or
Quantic Dream.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, they seem to be the ones who are really trying to strive for that real best of both worlds thing.
Yeah,
the same with the people who do like Life is Strange.
Yeah, that came to mind too. And the funny thing, cinematic almost implies like a sort of bombastic adventure excitement thing sometimes, but it doesn't always mean that.
No.
with the with Life is Strange, you get a more like an indie film or a drama sort of thing going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a coming of age story more than anything else, you know. There's very little bombast.
Yeah.
You've got like a couple of set pieces, you know,
Yeah.
where things can get a little tense. But yeah, most of the time, yeah, it's you've got this really choice driven experience. And I mean, same with Mass Effect, you know? Mass Effect also has a lot of that, the real cinematic thing, and also player choice. Just trying their damnedest to work together. And I think when you really have that, I think that's when you get the most magic.
Some of these very impactful games,
Yeah.
Set pieces, you know, I feel
That's
like
a big
that's
one.
exactly that's if I had to describe like one of the most or pick one of the most cinematic games, I'd have to go with like the Modern Warfare series.
Yeah.
You know, and the funny thing is, I was just thinking about Call of Duty 4, the first Modern Warfare, and I think the whole Call of Duty franchise is sort of like almost influenced by Medal of Honor, which itself, like, its big debut was Saving Private Ryan influence, you know?
Yeah.
That it, like, they, both Call of Duty and Modern Warfare, Medal of Honor, a lot of these games they were pulling from war movies, especially the whole D-Day scene and stuff like that.
Yes, right.
And then with Modern Warfare, COD 4, they started to split into like you know, more imaginary scenarios, more well, not fantastical, but rather like a modern
nothing taken like directly from history.
Exactly.
It was feasible. You know, the
Right.
struggles that were there felt like they could happen,
Yeah.
but they weren't directly pulling,
Yeah.
you know, from things.
Right. So yeah, you get like a Red Dawn feel in like Modern Warfare 2, for example, and it's just and yeah, the big climactic moments can make for a good feeling the first time you play, especially.
Yeah.
You had asked a question before the podcast started about like what was the first cinematic game that you played? What was the first one for you, Jace?
So, you know, in thinking about that, you know, it did take me a little while. You know, I played games that, you know, that had cutscenes, you know, as opposed to, you know, most games before, but early games, most of your story was kind of gleamed off of, you know, contextual stuff, talking to NPCs, and then, or maybe even sometimes you got some of your background into what was going on by just reading the instruction manual.
Yeah.
You know, or
right.
the back of the box that the game came in. But I think for me, maybe like really around when I started playing games, like say on my PlayStation, you know, I think really one of the first examples, I remember renting Final Fantasy VIII from the local video store, and I remember seeing it on the shelf. And, you know, games, the really big RPGs of that time, you know, they came in these boxes that had like 3 or 4 discs in them. And I remember seeing that and just thinking like, oh my God, that's insane.
Right.
And then, you know, playing it, you know, you in those old rental places, you know, you had maybe a weekend to play them. And so I'd be playing Final Fantasy VIII, and in just the small amount of time that I had with it, I barely got out of the starting area.
Right.
Because there was so much cutscene, there was all this stuff happening. And I mean, you started to see that more in PlayStation 2 era, where more games started having cutscenes and whatnot. But I think, if I really think about it, the first game that I kind of encountered that really kind of hammered home that idea of cinematic kind of storytelling probably would have been Metal Gear Solid 3. You know,
Sure.
Our friend Ryan is a huge fan of Metal Gear. I mean, we all are, but I learned about Metal Gear through him. And I remember one weekend when excuse me, when we were all at your house and we were playing Metal Gear Solid 3. And, you know, you had just like the way the cutscenes were shot, you know, they had a cinematic quality to them.
Yeah.
And just like, and also going back to set pieces, just everything in it felt just so deliberately staged.
That few things feel more like a direct descendant from a specific movie genre than Metal Gear Solid 3. Like that's straight up a Bond movie.
Oh, you know, yeah. No doubt.
It even has a Bond theme song, you know.
Snake Eater is a banger. It's so
absolutely,
good.
It slaps.
It really does.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's just so many moments in it. You know, like you can easily pick out and remember.
Yeah.
You know, like fighting the pain.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know why, but that is fighting the pain is that's the thing I remember from when Ryan showed us the game. I think it's just because it's such a ridiculous fight.
Sure. Yeah.
And I mean, basically all of the people, the big villains of Metal Gear Solid 3 are cartoonish, you know?
Yeah.
And
of any Metal Gear Solid, almost every character is cartoonish.
Yes, yeah,
and
that's a fair point.
Sort of lends to making Snake seem like, you know, the everyman against the world, like this, just a good soldier against supervillains.
Yeah, exactly. Basically. In a world that just keeps getting more increasingly weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how about you? I think when we were talking about it, your example it's quite a bit earlier than mine.
Well, yeah, the funny thing is I remember there being the word cinematic experience, or, well, 2 words on the back of the box of Out of This World for the Super Nintendo. It's called Another World for PC, I guess. They re-released it now in the modern era, but that game, like, I think that makes me think about how the music really contributes to cinematic experience. Like, that game, you know, it's all about how you're transported to another world. And it uses that kind of music that Jason just made fun of. But, like, you, in the first, I'd say, minute of the game, you are being chased by, like, this alien lion bear, and you swing from a vine valiantly. It's a 2D platformer, technically, a 2D shooter, technically, but it's not like it's grounded in realism is the idea. Like, your first gun runs out of charge very quickly, and your jumps are that of a human, you know?
You're not Mario.
No, sir. So, but it feels like a pulp movie in the sense that you're, like, really escaping through and this alien city. Like, I never did finish it until I grew into a high schooler, I believe.
It's a tough game.
Yeah, it's got some puzzles to it as well.
Right.
That it helps to have the internet to solve if you choose to do so.
Right.
But no, the one of the most cinematic set piece moments that I like to think back to is in that game, and that's when you're in your escape, as you spend most of the game doing, escaping, and you find yourself in a cockpit of a tank. And this tank, you have, like, you're slowly raised into, like, a gladiator arena, inside this thing. And just like in a real scenario, I think that if you were transported into a tank on another planet, it doesn't look like a tank. It just looks like a blobby machine with, eventually you find buttons in front of you. None of them are labeled in English or anything. So it's up to you to figure out what button does what to, like, launch missiles, and to, like, eventually you have to find the escape button to, like, eject out of that.
You just hope
tank.
there's an ejector seat somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. You just, like, slamming the eject button.
Right.
So it's such a cool moment, and, it feels very, like, Indiana Jones or something
Exactly.
to be, like, just flying by the seat of your pants.
Yeah, and that's the Indiana Jones thing. That's, the biggest and easiest comparison you could put to, like, say, Uncharted.
Oh, yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
That's when you explain Uncharted to someone who's never played it. You know, it's basic. You just describe it as just, it's you're basically playing an Indiana Jones movie.
Yep.
And that's cool. And again, going back to set pieces, I distinctly remember, for a long time, the train sequence of Uncharted 2 was, it had just started to become, like, this gold standard, for set pieces.
Okay.
In games at that time. Because especially around the PS3 era, it felt like we started to really see that escalation of, creating these games and environments and scenarios that just really kind of kept escalating and pushing what they were able to do.
Like in Uncharted 2, it starts the game off with you dangling off a cliff in the train.
Yes.
It sets up that, like, this is going to be a high octane game.
Exactly.
Like, it tells you that with that scene in the beginning. And, eventually you come back to the train scene and it's fantastic. You're enjoying it. But, a funny thing, like, even Uncharted 3 was like, we gotta up that ante.
Yeah.
And the most famous set piece in that game is the plane scene.
Yeah, the cargo plane.
Yeah, when you're dangling, instead of off a cliff in a train, you're dangling from a plane on a crate.
Yes.
Crates, planes, trains, cliffs.
Yep. They that scene had become so famous. Like, even when Sony tried to make their equivalent of Super Smash Bros.
Yeah. PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale.
Thank you.
We're going to be borrowing some of those words at some point.
Yes, we will. I'm sure we will. Nathan Drake's level is that plane.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that was really cool, is I think they really started PlayStation All-Stars was not a great game, but it did try to do some cool things, and level transition was something it did do pretty cool, and I feel like it almost kind of beat Smash Bros. To the punch in that regard, especially because, I mean, that you had, like, you started in the plane, and as the fight progressed, the back blew out, and then the crates were there, and so that was really cool.
Yeah.
It probably hinders the competitive viability of the level, and I don't even know if there was a competitive mode for that game. It's been a hot minute since I've played it.
Right. That game was hindered by one major thing, and that's in that they decided to steer away from the KOs come from being knocked out of the ring, and they, like, KOs come from being hit by a special attack.
Exactly. And I mean, I give them props for, basically not wanting to completely rip off the Smash Bros. Formula, but, like 99 out of 100 fighting games use a health bar,
Yeah.
And so if you, like, you can make a fighting game with unique concepts, but it's probably still a good idea to use a health bar.
Right.
You know, just some aspects should probably still be there.
Mm-mm.
But no, we're getting
lost in the weeds.
a little bit, but we can bring it back because we're briefly talking about fighting games. You know, like fighting games, a lot of them now, their story modes, when they have them, pretty much a lot of them now are doing like a cinematic story mode.
That's right.
I mean, for what I can recall, really the first one to do it, or the one that I can at least recall, would be Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat DC
9.
versus...
Oh, Mortal Kombat, you're right.
Yeah.
DC even earlier.
Mortal Kombat versus DC. That was their first...
experiment with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
And
9,
MK9
10,
did
11.
It very well.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then Injustice 1 and 2, both of them. And it's basically, like, NetherRealm has really just...
They're the master of the single-player story mode
For a fighting
for fighting games.
Yeah,
and...
I think I would agree. And I mean, and so now you're seeing other fighting games try to do the same thing.
Street Fighter 5.
Yeah, Street Fighter 5, you know, they tried it.
Yeah.
I still haven't tried Street Fighter 5's story mode.
Yeah.
But I did Tekken's.
You don't have to do it because I showed you that one scene where Zangief deflects bullets with his bare chest.
Exactly. I mean, if you show them the best scene of the movie,
Yeah.
you don't need to see the movie.
I'm saving you 2 hours of your life. You know?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I could probably better spend that playing Yakuza.
Right. So, yeah, you get these new cinematic experiences in fighting games. I mean, it's the whole storytelling, cutscene influenced thing is sort of permeated through the campaign mode of every game.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah, it really has become, like I said at the beginning,
The
standard in which it's done, and it's just a lot of times I really do like it, but and I mean it kind of brings us to the to like my final big question, is do video games have to be cinematic? Like
Yes.
Okay. Oh, there we go. But yeah, it's just it's working, but it's just games are different than like movies or television or books. But I mean, you do see games that are really influenced, have very booky, television-y, yeah. But it's just like, I don't know. I couldn't help but wonder to myself, when we were first kind of getting this, the idea for this episode put together was just, like, how do you tell a thoroughly video game-y story without it being cinematic,
Yeah, and I think that what you have right now is a sort of a divide in the sense of what, like, the two ways of doing it. Like, do you do it exclusively through gameplay, or do you tell that story through cutscenes? And you get, I think, you have the ambient dialogue of AAA games, driving that for a lot of it. But with indie games, what you tend to get a lot of the time is, maybe I'm making too big of a generalization, but you'll find that they try to tell the story through the gameplay more often than a AAA game does.
Right.
The first thing that comes to mind is like Enter the Gungeon has a good story, but it's not like a story game so much. But and it doesn't have any cutscenes. It has a couple moments of dialogue that you talk through, but you just get like you get these pieces of lore through with the items and stuff like that. But it's like you don't need. It has cinematic references to it,
Right.
But
but it's not telling its story in a cinematic way.
Right.
And I think for me, one of the biggest examples, if we're thinking about indie games, and it's probably one of my favorite stories in games, and that'd be Gone Home.
Sure.
I absolutely love that game. And from just basically the moment I started playing it, up to the end. I mean, it's a short game, but I did, I had to play it all in one sitting.
Yeah.
And yeah, its lore is also built basically all in your interaction. For those of you who haven't played Gone Home, you play as a college student who is like, she's come home, I think either for a vacation. It's been a little while since I've played it, so I've kind of forgotten. But it's like you come home like on a vacation or just on break to your house, and you're expecting basically your parents and your sister to be there to welcome you, but no one is there. The house is just empty, and you see just basically a note on the door, and it's from your sister, like apologizing, saying like, "I'm sorry, I'm not going to be here."
Yeah.
And so, then you find the spare key, like
in a vase or something.
Yeah, like under a thing. And so and you're going through the house, and so you are learning all of the information about this the same way the character is. And so you're finding clues as to why, for one, as to why no one is here, and also why your sister left.
Right.
Because it just out of the gate, it's like, did she, like, has she run away and whatnot? What is going on? And so, like, throughout your time experiencing it, you find out that she, has, like, developed a really close relationship with this other person, and that has just completely changed their world. But like there's conflict with the family. None of them are happy that they're in this new house, and there's just all of this extra stuff going on. But you're finding it out just by your interactions with what is going on. And it's just, especially near the very end of it, I just distinctly remember just like rushing to the final room. And I'm just thinking like, shit, what is happening? And then you get there and you get this final piece of the puzzle and the credits roll, and I just remember just sitting back and I'm just thinking to myself, holy shit, what did I just experience by doing this? And it's just that gameplay experience has just continued to stick with me. And it did that without huge exposition dumps or 2-hour cutscenes to explain the family dynamic.
That is the game one massive exposition dump, maybe, which is fine.
Right.
You don't want to say I don't mean to say that as a negative thing. It's just that what it doesn't do is use like a cinematic style. Right. I totally agree with your point that it tells a totally video game story in a totally video game way, in that like it's not actually, no, it's a very real story in a totally video game way.
Exactly.
It's just this this interactive experience, I guess. Yeah. And that's something that video games can do that you can't do in
basically anything else.
Right.
But I mean, that being said, I do really just thoroughly enjoy the experiences, that we're given in these cinematic games. But it's just, again, just like the whole point of this is just kind of exploring the idea of like
what's the alternative?
Exactly. It doesn't have to automatically, be this way, because it seems like that people think that's the evolution, and like it's the cinematic is the end goal.
Yeah.
Which, just personally, I don't think it is. It's just a way of doing it,
and it's funny. It seems like games are almost like destined to be compared to movies forever.
Yeah, it really does.
Because I was gonna say, like, well, one of the greatest games that's come out in the last few years is Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
Sure.
And I was thinking about it for a second. Like, that game got compared to Studio Ghibli like a lot,
Yeah.
in the terms of its musical application and its feel.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a cinematic game, in my opinion.
It's also a very video game story.
Yeah.
You know, it couldn't be told. Or maybe it could, but it's most ideally told in the way it was.
Yeah, it's not necessarily even like a story-driven game, you know?
Not really, no. It's pretty light on it in some ways.
So, it does have an important story, it's just that it's not the main reason you're playing the game for most anyone. And so you can have these massive games that don't use the cinematic style so much, but yet they do draw from films a little bit in terms of like presentation sometimes,
right?
You know,
like
scoring, sure, camera movement, like in God of War, for example. You know, but I feel like scoring for games and movies can be almost identical. You know,
sure.
You get the same tension and release with these like adrenaline raising moments, and you need this people, you know, there is a difference in the sense that what you don't have in cinema is like the repeated song indefinitely, like, and that's what you have to use sometimes, like an ambient song of some kind or a loop, because you don't know how long a player's going to be in a certain area.
Like, just imagine if the Matrix used the same song for every fight, you know? Yeah. Exactly.
It's pretty funny.
I know. That's one thing I keep thinking about. Like, you know, you get these games that have just really fantastic soundtracks, you know, and they get unique pieces of music for so many things. But it just seems that more often than not, they just neglect to give you more than a couple of battle themes.
Yeah.
You know? It's really bad in JRPGs.
Yeah.
I mean, like, but, and I mean, sometimes, you know, it can get to just be grating, but like Persona 5, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard the battle theme in Persona 5.
Yeah.
But it's so damn good. It didn't bother me that I kept hearing it. But that being said, when Persona 5 Royal comes out,
it'll be a nice
I'm hoping, I'm ready for something a little different.
It's off topic, but I have to talk about
the
music for Uncharted a little bit.
Oh, dude, yes. Please
because the Uncharted 4 theme is amazing. Because it, like, when you finally get to that opening credits about an hour into the game, I expected, like, the same. And I've played these games before, but whatever. It's been a while, and I guess I'm more conscientious about it now. I was really paying attention to it the first day I was playing it, especially. But the way they use the music, like the first time you hear the theme in that game, it reveals that it's in a minor key as compared to the original like major key of the first three.
That's like the classic Uncharted theme.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's
That's so fantastic.
It really is. And you're like, because the game does have a slightly darker story to it.
Sure.
And, you know, that leads you, it is also called A Thief's End.
Right.
You're like, oh shit, is Nathan Drake gonna die in this?
Right,
you know?
Yeah, there was a lot of people thought about that.
And, so that was a great moment. And then what I found, you also get to this scene where you're like reminiscing in your attic in Drake's house, you know, and when you pick up the little books of like each individual adventure, you get like a musical themes from that game.
Dang.
You know.
Oh, that's super cool for you because you played them all.
In a row. Right?
Yeah,
you can
and
listen for it, right?
Yeah, like I mean, for me, you know, I played Uncharted 4 when it had come out. And it had been some time since Uncharted 3.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, I don't think that reference would have totally gone over my head, but I definitely think that in your case, for what you just did, you got to really experience it in a way that was probably more meaningful.
And last it's hilarious that when you pick up that little Nerf gun in his attic, it starts. You hear the battle music of the game for the first time. Like, that's the tutorial for firing a gun in that game, and you get like this.
I forgot all about that.
This fast-paced music. This like the drums going. And they're like shooting little targets, little mandalas hanging from your ceiling. Yeah, so that was pretty funny.
That's great.
Yeah.
One of the big things that, of course, that I remember from Uncharted 4 is the couple of times when you play Crash Bandicoot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like when Drake is playing it, and then when his daughter is playing it.
Yeah.
Like, just that's good. It is a great game.
It's almost like Naughty Dog is closing a chapter on all of its games in a sense by playing, with that reference
for
to
sure
Crash Bandicoot. But...
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe in Last of Us 2 there will be a Jak and Daxter reference. Like maybe Ellie has Jak and Daxter in her room.
Oh,
there's
sure.
my hope. Yeah.
What if you play Uncharted 1 briefly in Last of Us 2?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That would be wild.
Yeah, it would be insane. But, yeah. I think that roughly wraps up our episode.
Yeah, that wraps it up. Yeah, no, we were able to, really dig into it, and I'm glad.
Yeah. Cinematic games. Cinema in movies. There's more we could say about it, I think.
Absolutely. And you know what? We might. Another time, but I definitely feel like with today, what we're currently playing, I think we've dug into it in a good way. But you know what? It's like I said, it's a topic that we most likely will come back to at some point. But for now, that wraps it up for us. Yeah, thank you for listening all so much, everybody. And we shall see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.